closed platforms and open source platforms, as if it were enough to choose or to change to an open source alternative, it would be a solution. But the solution is not simple. Our studies here in Brazil show that the most famous open source or free software alternatives, like Moodle, for example, are inside big tech data centers. They use the servers from big data. And the second belief is related to the understanding that digital education is only related to usability. We always hear about digital competencies, digital skills, assessment tools, and open educational resources or digital resources. And the infrastructure layer is always ignored. I don't know if I have time, Javiera.
A couple of minutes, maybe 1.5.
Okay. So I prepared so much slides and I reduced it. And this last one is the most important because I think it is time to discuss with educational staff, public managers. Now we will have an opportunity through the new government, I hope so, to discuss this. How we can improve open source platforms or how we can using open data as a common good. How AI can be used or can be established a good relation to people, to citizenship, to improve more quality, more inclusion. Because when we talk about inclusion, internet inclusion or access to everyone, what kind of access? We wanna give access to the big tech platforms to continue this kind of use that we know is not a good use for the education, for the students, for educators, and for the whole community. And the other point is a big challenge because all the things, all the documents we have nowadays is about usabilities, how develop more competencies, more digital competence. And nobody talks about these layers behind the ecosystems, as Javiera has told about. We need to talk about this digital literacy. It's a new kind of the digital literacy nowadays that is important that education start looking at it.
Thank you, Priscila. And one of the things that we need to bring into this discussion, and from what Priscila was telling us, and if we think of the policy ecosystem within the educational sector, is that most of the policies are driven nowadays by data, but this data is hosted in proprietary environments. So the students, for example, in confront with like open data, which is technically transparent data, students cannot challenge unfair and unjust learning analytics, for example. And there is so many issues about consideration of teachers in the environment. And there is an interesting chapter in Weapons of Math Destruction by Cassie O'Neill about how teachers and students get punished through data because what the data inform is not about the environment of the student, but just about performance. So continuing with the discussion, I want to bring in Dr. Marwan Tarazi from the University of Birzeit. So he will be showing us and talking with us about their experience in using data to develop, again, data literacy, so connecting with what Priscila was talking about, for students in a very particular and unique context. So Marwan, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you, Javiera. Hello, everybody. What I'm going to talk about is a bit how do we deal, I mean, with data and open data in an educational setup when you have a situation that is really deprived of data. I mean, our region now, and we've done, you know, a series of studies and research like the Global Development Barometer and other studies. It's clear that our region doesn't have much open data, doesn't have data, and as we all know, data it's critical to have data. I mean, you want to have open data, especially in difficult contexts like the ones in the Middle East, for example, or in MENA. You want to have data, for example, I mean, you need data for measuring what's going on. There's applications of data in a wide range of things. You need it to measure how education is happening. You want to be looking at indicators of, you know, like students' grades. You want to find out where they're coming from. You want to look at economic indicators. You want that. If you have data around these things, it will give you clear information about how your educational system is done. So we have this. We also know, of course, that we need open data and various sources of data for planning. If you want to plan for your educational system, and again, an important aspect, again, coming from a place like in the Middle East, when you have, we're running into emergencies, you want to identify in different communities that are facing difficult or hard, excuse me, difficult situations. Or so in this situation, what do we do? How do we deal with something like that? So what we've done is we looked at two things. We have a program where, for example, now we're teaching a program called, we're working on digital, called Governing Responsible AI and Data for Development. And what we're doing in this situation is that we're getting young women and men, and we're getting them involved in a training program, whereas they have to do data for development. So what they're doing is that they're identifying problems, development problems, and they want to find solutions for these problems. Now, the problem here is that if you don't have enough available data, you cannot engage the community with data for development. You cannot come up with data or AI solutions. So we're running into a difficult problem in this case. And the challenge here is, how do we drive the creation of data? So it's something applicable. It's something that we're living with. It's something we face it as we are trying to do real data or real development for you know, AI development situations where we know that we need to use data as an enabler for development. Within this context, you know, we're trying to figure out how can we influence create this data ecosystem, how can we influence it for education. And the most effective way that we've come up with is we need to mainstream data educational system in mainstream education. So in this case, what we did, we did this program called the Experiential Learning Objects. We decided that unless we go to the basic educational system and unless we work with the students in the basic educational system and start at that level, we will not be able to come up with an effective data literacy or data ecosystem. With this model, what we did is the following. We know that the educational system is not really working on developing the skills needed for young men and women to get into that. So what we did is we went out and we went to the existing curriculum and went with the existing curriculum, and we informed people. We went to the ministry and we said, okay, listen, we're going to take the objectives that you teach, the lessons that you teach in normal educational system. So we took those lessons, and for every lesson in the textbook, we developed an alternative learning design that achieves the same objectives required of the national curriculum. And with this objective of the national curriculum, we designed it so that it would be taught at the same time, with the same level of effort, and with the same teachers. So what we did, and with these things, in every lesson, we integrated skills that included skills that enable students to work with data and to analyze data and to become literate from a very early age. So with this model, in effect, what we did is that we were able to enter the educational system, introduce these data skills and knowledge, and not challenge the system by saying we have to change the curriculum or developing new curriculum. It's a model that we worked on, we applied it, and now at this point of time, we're doing it with 45,000 children in a systemic way. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Marwan. And understanding the difficulties of like developing all this infrastructure, I think kind of influencing the curriculum through ministerial discussions can actually change the data landscape. But how do we as educators have this model to be able to look into what data allows us to do or would facilitate us to do if we can have the understanding of the national curriculum, for example, of what is expected, what is the learning outcomes, and how we can create alternative methods for teaching and assessment within the information that data provide us when data is transparent. So this is kind of the difference between what like Priscila was talking and you were mentioning. If we don't have a solid open data infrastructure in education, it disables us as a teachers to make informed decisions about how to enhance the curriculum, considering the challenges in each one of our educational spaces. And this is why we have the opportunity at university in teaching education programs, for example, and this is kind of passing the ball to Victoria, in using information that should be publicly available and should be transparently available to inform the development of new teachers, new academics in academic development programs, in teacher training programs, and also involve the ministers and the ministries into facilitating access to transparent and actually trustworthy data that we can use for decision-making without having to rely in private companies, private organizations that actually give us sometimes quite biased data because we don't know how obscure are the algorithms when they're analyzing our students, including socioeconomic background, for example. So I want to open the floor for Victoria from the University of Lleida to talk a little bit about her experience working both with teachers and in a teaching training program, and also with senior citizens, because this is when we talk about inclusion and participation in society. So Victoria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Javiera. And I think it was great to have Priscila and Marwan before, because they set quite well the settings of the context that we have for open data and in general for data. So it was clear, I think, from the previous presentations how important data, well, the situation of data to be understood by teachers is to try to use this data to improve teaching, improve planning, and of course the infrastructure. So my talk, it will be about two experiences. One is more small scale with a teacher training program at my university, and the other one is about a project that we use to empower citizens, including seniors, but any adult person, to introduce data literacy. So all the competencies related to data literacy that are important in order to use data or collect data, create, represent, and so on. So that will be the two things that I will be talking about. They both are mainly based on the idea that on the idea of data literacy as a central competence in the context of digitalization and global knowledge society that we are living in any context, but we are talking here specifically about education. And of course, we have seen also data literacy as a competence that is quite featured in frameworks like the European Digital Competence Framework for Citizens. So that's also featured there. And interestingly, also, it was also mentioned about artificial intelligence before, but actually in one of the most recent reports from the UNESCO, it's also considered that data literacy is part of the artificial intelligence literacy. So considering this ability to understand how artificial intelligence collects, cleans, manipulates, and analyzes data, that's also an important part of it. So in that context, as I was saying, first I will talk a bit about this experience in teacher training. As I said, it's quite small scale and starting, but also derived from different studies that we did about data privacy and social media, and how these social media could be useful for educational context, but how they lack this awareness of policies and about data that was being created in this context. So that was more the setting, the background. But here I specifically work with open data actually. So we have a new minor in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for future teachers in primary schools. And in this program, we have some courses that in which I try to work with open data. So we have small, like short sessions. And actually, we tried, you also mentioned, Marwan, before, an experience, similar experience, but it's in this case with the student teachers. And we have this presentation in which we introduce open data, what is open data, why it's important, which kind of repositories of open data we can use. So here we look at different government repositories that we have in the context of Spain and Europe. And then, we have a small task where they are supposed to get this role as students, and they could also use these kind of activities for their future classes. So we also work always with this role model where the future teachers have to think about the specific real problem, usually thinking about the neighborhood or more this societal open-ended problem, where they should think which kind of data they need to justify why this problem is important, and trying to explain a bit more about this problem that in this first point, at this first step. So they think about that, and they should try to find open data that helps to explain more about this kind of problem or issue. So that's, and then we also ask them to think about which kind of visualizations of data could be useful to convey the message that they want to convey, and also how this could be better like storytelling techniques. So we are trying to work different abilities here, like critical thinking, storytelling techniques, research skills, so that they develop this small task. Then in the next steps, they have also another course where they could do in groups also a specific STEAM challenge, and they could also use open data to try to solve a specific problem, challenge, and so on. So that's something that we have started doing not so long ago, but it's something I think it's really engaging and motivating for students to work in this way, because they feel that it's of course open data, it's really useful, has been already created, it's there, and it's real. So it's not thinking about something new, and of course we need real data to solve real problems. So that's something I think interesting. And in that work, we also, of course, we are working with these data literacy competences that are needed for them to understand, to be more aware about data, and also dealing with data and thinking more critically about them. Then we have also another thing that I wanted to explain. I will share my screen for that one. And in that one, I present this project, the Data Literacy for Citizenship project. And that's an European and Erasmus project that we are doing since, well, 2 years ago. And in this project, as I was mentioning before, we want to empower citizens to get these skills, these competencies to learn different aspects of data. So from understanding, being aware of them and how they are created, what are they, and also how to create data, how to collect it, or how to create different visualizations, and being active with data, actually using data to improve life quality or to improve societal quality. So these are different aspects that we have also in the framework that we develop, but also we have these transversal elements that are about ethics and privacy, which are always connecting all these elements. So DALI project includes actually any adult. We say young adult, workers, unemployed, seniors, and we mention specifically for seniors that are a group that usually has access to the digital world, like late in time in their lives, and they are probably less aware of specific aspects of data. For example, how data is created or how is collected through the different use of technology. They are using also mobile phones, and how they could be empowered so that they can understand what they are doing and how it is being doing. So that's this project. And for that, we are using a playful approach. So we are actually creating different board games. Usually there are some online, but they are mostly printable versions so that they can learn more about these basics of data literacy. And in that sense, we have also one of the playful experiences that we presented them and we have been working with them is this one. So that's called We Are Data, or We Are Living in Data. And that's an experience that actually everyone can try, and is trying participants to create their own visualizations of data. And these visualizations can be based on open data and own data, for example. For example, here there is one about the total amount of minutes of sunshine in a city. That's something that came from open data repository, but there are others that are just created by each one on their own, so that they are invited to think about how their lives, how their cities, how their countries can be quantified, can be thought about through data. And I think I will stop here. I think Javiera will also share the links, but we also have a collection of resources that you could also consult about data literacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. And it's really interesting when you talk about teacher training and then citizenship training in a way or another with people, with common people. When we talk about society problems, I think this is the key denominator when we talk about literacy. And it's the same that Priscila has been saying, Marwan, and as well as you. We think about society problems. We think about how we can help people addressing. And when we look at, for example, at the standard of participation, which is basically what open government data promotes, we talk about informing citizens, consult them, involve them, collaborate them, and empowering them. And data literacy needs to be built in on a scaffold. And when you talk about teachers, it's how actually the teachers will make their decisions, but also how they will start developing data literacies from early childhood, so primary, secondary school. And also we have empowerment of senior citizens. We are normally left behind because all the consultations and kind of debates happen in platforms that normally they don't have access to. So how we empower the society, how we empower the citizen, and how we make active citizenship through data is actually a quite interesting topic, but we have the expert here with us. So Luigi, wherever you are hiding on the screen, please tell us a bit more of the work that you've been doing with Monithon in Italy and with all the projects that we love, you know, that I'm a fan of as well, di Open Coesione. So, okay, again, the floor is yours, and see you in a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Javiera, and hello everybody. I'm really excited to be here, and also I'm really glad to have heard about all these other presentations, and especially the latest tool. I think it's really interesting, and maybe we'll be using it for our tools and methods. So I will show you our website, which is monithon.eu. Monithon is an independent initiative. It's a non-profit, it's a very small organization that develops tools and methods for anyone, for the whole citizenship, to find out how public funding is spent in a form of participatory evaluation of the results and the effectiveness of public funding and public projects on the ground. We also collaborate with the government and other organizations to try to make them use the data that we collect. So this is another step in open data. We try to release all the data we collect as in open data as well. So some numbers. We have been working with the Open Cohesion School project, which is a project that is managed by the Italian government, and now active also in other European countries like Portugal, Spain, and Croatia, and Greece. It has involved in 7th edition, has involved more than 34,000 students, almost 2,000 teachers, and produced 100 civic monitoring reports. This is something I will show you later. We also work with universities. So the last semester, we have been teaching courses in 2 universities, in Turin and in Bergamo, but there are also other universities that uses our platform, our tools for engaging students in this kind of a civic monitoring. Then we also work with NGOs, local associations, local groups, especially for the monitoring of the recovery plans in Italy and elsewhere. So I will talk very briefly about our method. The first step is to being part of an initiative. So to try to, this is something that we will do in groups. So there are, also funding for this kind of stuff, but very limited. Or you can create your own group, and this is something that sometimes happens. You have to select a project that is interesting for you, for your community, for your local media. Then you try to get information on the history of the project and the context behind the funding and why those funding have been created and spent in that way. So here is very important to learn about open data that are available. And the first kind of open data that are very important are the data about public spending and public contracts. So the idea is to understand how public policy works and how the implementation of public policy works, which seems a bit scary, but also high school students find this very fun because it's something that is intriguing them, because it talks about their local challenges, their local problems. So they usually become very interested. The other aspect is about going and pay a visit to the project, interview all the actors involved, so collecting data that then can be used for the report. Then you go to our platform, I will show you very briefly, and create a report, and then share your results with the local media. You send all the results to local journalists and organize, for example, meetings and public events with public administrators, demanding accountability, asking the hard questions about why the project is not so well developed or what can be suggested to improve its effectiveness. And that we care so much about impact, so we also ask what kind of impact this action has delivered. So I will very briefly show you how this works in practice. So this is our tool. You start from this map, which is called Project Finder, and each dot in the map is a publicly funded project, in this case, a European funded project. So you can browse through all these themes and budgets and years. Then when you find a project that is interesting for you, you just go there and see some initial information from the open data from national portal about European funding in Italy, which is called Open Cohesion. And then you start monitoring, inizia il monitoraggio. So you jump to this web page in which you find some useful steps, additional steps for planning your monitoring, your activities. And you also find, which is quite nice, you find all the data that are more relevant for your projects from different sources. So from national sources, from the European Commission. And the idea here, I'm sorry, it's all in Italian, but the idea here is to help people, citizens, and students to interpret the data and to, translating the policy jargon into something that they can understand a little bit more. So the final part of this step is to the real questionnaire. So again, they are guided through all the steps of creating a civic monitoring report. But I don't have really much time to show you all these steps. So I just going back to our own page. So once the reports are reviewed by Monithon, by our editorial board, and are published, they are shown in this map. You also see that there are reports in other European countries. So we have the same platform that is already translated. We received some EU money for that in another languages. So based on where you live, you can select your platform and use that. So this other map is about not the projects, but the reports. So each report, each dot, it's a civic monitoring report on one project. So you can again browse them. So imagine policymakers or journalists can find how the projects are doing. So the green buttons are good, the red dots are not so good, and so they have an idea, and they can also filters for operational program, for a programming cycle, and so on. So this is an example of a report. You got some initial information that you can jump again to the Monithon platform, in which you can see how this reports looks like. Basically, on the left, you can find all the open data, the official data from the government. And then on the right, you find all the description and data and analysis that the people and the students have done. So mainly qualitative analysis, but also quantitative analysis. They can also attach infographics or data journalism articles. They can attach videos and photographs, and also they judge the projects analyze the weaknesses and strengths and risks, and also give ideas and solutions to improve the project. This is pretty much it. I'll come back to the page again. What we do with all these dots and all these reports, we try to analyze them or give access to other journalists or policymakers, like national government administrators or the European Commission. So each one is able to create analysis on aggregated data, right? For example, for a specific topic, or for a specific region or area. And you can find also an infographics here with all our data. We also care so much about the impact, and we measure impact of this kind of monitoring in terms of new connection generated. So we map the connections among the local communities, the students and the NGOs and the local media and local governments. So see what kind of connections are more strong or weaker. And then we measure the impact in terms of how policymakers responded to the feedback. So from not being available to discuss the results, to improve the projects based on the suggestion that they received. So I think this is all I have to say right now. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Luigi. For me, this is one of the best structured projects. And one of the things I like the most is like they have the steps very clear, so it's quite easy to replicate. You work in similar environments and it's easy to translate so into kind of higher education. This is for me one of the best examples of open educational practices, because the methodology is open, the data is open, the reports are open. So it's an absolute great showcase of excellence in development of data literacies. So we have 10 minutes to go around, and I'm just gonna start asking for questions from the public. So if the panelists are happy to start getting questions, I have one from Eugenia Loria for Victoria and this data literacy program. How do you assess the knowledge before and after the program? And what is the goal level of literacy you're looking for the citizens? By the way, Eugenia is doing her PhD dissertation on data literacy. So she might have quite a lot of questions, and I want to put you in touch.
That's great. Thank you, Javiera. Thank you, Eugenia, for the question. Well, actually, I didn't explain the framework that we developed, and here I think it's easy to perhaps show the framework just shortly to explain the goal that we have for the level of data literacy. I will just shortly present that if I'm here. Yeah. Okay, so we have we have developed this framework that will be, in short, published in different languages in the website, but still not there. And what we did here was, through a Delphi panel, develop this framework in different phases. And we have like 3 main elements: understanding data, acting on data, and engaging through data. And then this transversal component that is ethics and privacy. And then each of these elements have sub-elements and different levels. Like we were based, or we started from the structure of DICCOM EDU, the European Digital Competence Framework, to use the kind of same structure with elements, sub-elements, and levels from A to C. And for example, in this project, we are actually targeting mostly this A level, the first level, that it's more understanding what is data, like in the understanding data, what is data, how data is created, this awareness about different kinds of creation and being critical about how data is created, more in this basic level. Then about acting on data, it's more trying to find some data and collecting perhaps through a device, or for example, a smartwatch that collects your steps. That's something easy to do. And then also trying to manage data in a really basic way. So not, there is the advanced level, for example, considers pivot tables and mixing and using filters. So something quite easy, like using data for daily life. And then this engaging through data is considering that there is these different policies, what they say these policies, and also knowing that there are possibilities to engage through data. And then the ethics and privacy are always in the middle for everything here. So that's mostly the goal for these different games. So there are different games being developed to target specifically different elements, sometimes more than one element of this in the framework, but mostly at the this A level, the first level, basic one. And about the other part of the question, so we actually are still finishing the game. So there are different kind of games that are being finished right now. And the idea is to start piloting right, well, in really short time with the target groups. So at this point, we are still collecting data from the testings, from the pilots, and also from the facilitators that are in each of these target groups. Of course, it will be at later point, we will also consider the part of how data literacy is being improved, of course, because that's something that is the goal of the project. So we, of course, as an innovation project, this kind of Erasmus Plus projects are based on creating, producing materials, mostly, not so research-based, but that's something that we want to also incorporate at some point. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was muted. No, thanks a lot. And one of the things that all these frameworks provide as educators is kind of a roadmap and a guidance for us to kind of translate the activities into our own context. So, for example, another thing that I like to showcase, because of course it's one of my favorite projects, is School of Data. School of Data is available in Portuguese, Spanish, French, and that can help you with practical skills, with students, with academics, with teachers, because one of the issues when you talk about talking data literacy is the connection between political literacy, citizenship literacy, and statistical literacy. So when you try to talk about data and the infrastructures of data and the conundrums of data, we need to think about and looking at what Eugenia was mentioning, assess the knowledge before. If people don't have a decent base of statistical understanding, they can be easily manipulated with data. And we've seen this over and over again in the last few years around political ballots and political polls. So if we think about how the data landscape, how the data landscape has changed since we first published the book in I think it was 2016, 2017, we will publish this chapter. Luigi, Marwan, Priscila, how do you think that the data landscape has changed in the last few years, considering, for example, the COVID period? Anyone? Luigi? Free? You muted.
Well, I can just, very briefly, I can say that maybe it's not, changed so much regarding the data that we use at Monithon. We have, as we all know, we had this initial hype, all the governments that were, interested in showing off a little bit. And yeah, but right now, I think that this push is not so perceived, as it was before. And so in the case of, for example, the recovery plans data, on the use of EU stimulus package for the recovery after the COVID crisis, and also there were specific, funding to manage the COVID crisis. It's difficult, to find data about that, because the member states are not required to publish all the data, as, for example, in the case of the European funding, the cohesion funding, the traditional European funding. And so, yeah, then most of the member states are not so transparent. And we also experience in some cases the fact that they have difficulty in collecting data. So it's not it's not only about publishing data, but it's also about having first some detailed and high quality data to publish. So yeah, it's from the origin maybe that we have some problems. This is my perception.
Thank you, Marwan.
Javiera. Okay.
Marwan?
I just want to say, I mean, the data is data. It's the infrastructure. It's the fuel. I mean, what's getting more scary and more sophisticated are the tools now and the mechanisms. And now we're getting, and what's worrying more and more is the speed by which the tools are coming up and the speed by which the legislation is catching up with the tools. And so now, we're moving into new territory like metaverse, and what could be coming with these things. And still, everybody's just, let's wait and see what happens. And by the time what happens comes up, we're going to have, it'll be too late to legislating things because they went up. So, like, that's why our challenge, all of us, our challenge is how quickly can we move into educating regular citizens into the data and what their rights are, what their privacy issues are, and how to demand for things, because it's just like the environment. One of these major things is slowly going out of hand. If we don't get collective action, it's going to be a problem.
Thank you, and thank you, Marwan. And you're right, absolutely right. Pri.
Just to share with you that I think what has changed in the last specific case in Brazil, that we don't have an open policy for open data anymore. Now it is a challenge to try to have it again, because we have some data open, but it's an illusion. The School of Data here in Brazil has has so many problems to organize projects or to do something so nice like the Luigi site and Victoria sites, because the open policy suddenly disappeared. And there is a big challenge for us to the next government now.
Thank you. And this is where the intersection between academia and activism start kind of developing, because in a way or another, when we advocate for transparent, for fair, for trustworthy data, and data that enables empowering citizens and students and families and kind of the society, we also need to advocate for that. We cannot keep sitting behind our computers and waiting for the data to happen. It's actually our responsibility to join the discussions and to catalyze these discussions, because we need better data. We need effective data, but also we need fair data. Data that is unbiased, that doesn't put our students in vulnerable situations, that doesn't put our schools in vulnerable situations, that don't depend of like the humor of the government in turn. So I think for the next discussion in the next like 3-4 years, what I like to see is like how we are not just empowering citizens, we are enabling them to participate actively in society, for them to kind of catalyze the development of policies that are solid, robust, and that enhance and improve the quality of education, considering education as a key human right. So I think we are on time. I don't know, Anna, Fiona, Keziah, if you're still around, how are we doing with the time? Are we fine? Or
we are good. Yes, I think we're actually on time. So this has been a very lovely conversation. I really enjoy learning from all that you are doing and then all that we still have to do ahead. So very exciting times, I would say. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will have another roundtable discussion tomorrow. please come and join us and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. You do a great job, and I admire you deeply.